I'm gonna hit OK and then see what happens. Whatever.
And I overheard a bit of your UCS meeting about charter one because I had to be on checking panel. And
Are we?
no.
Morning.
The cabinet.
Good morning, Representative. How are you?
You've got.
Hi, Representative Haddad.
I got you. And I'm not sure if Representative Haddad, did you talk to Senator Flexer? I don't know, past 24 hours. I'm not sure if she's going to be joining us right now.
Monday. Sunday.
You guys can hear me, right?
8 a.m. intake like this.
I can hear you.
Okay.
30.
Joanne, you're
no
muted.
sound,
Okay.
apparently. Hold on a second.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was gonna say, oh, yeah.
What are you feeling?
I
had
thought
to
I thought that
switch
Representative Haddad was frozen.
No, I'm just trying to contemplate, but now I can hear you, so we're good.
Okay. Have you happened to talk to Senator Flexer this morning or yesterday?
Yes,
know if
I've talked to Senator Flexer. She'll be joining us a little bit later in the meeting.
Perfect. So we can get started whenever you'd like.
Okay. I don't know if we should, let's see, we've got a couple of colleagues online behind cameras on and off.
I'll find out.
So that's good. All right.
And yeah, then I have this. I think.
All right, so we'll start. The first hour is reserved for Yukon Health, right?
Yes.
There are a number of questions posed during our initial public hearing, and I guess there's a relatively short document. I think it looks like it's only 5 pages with a couple lines trailing off. So why don't we go over that first, and then we'll see if there are any additional questions to be made. But maybe folks from Yukon Health should introduce themselves first. There's actually a bunch of people on this call who I don't know if I've met. So
Hi, Representative Haddad. My name is Marie Schweitzer. I'm Director of Government Relations from Yukon Health. And today we have from Yukon Health 2 individuals from our finance team, and I will introduce them for you and they can say hello. So first, we have Chad Bianchi. He is our Vice President of Finance Controller at Yukon Health. Chad, if you want to say hello.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chad. And also joining us is Greg Sinaj, and he is the Assistant Vice President of Budget and Data Analytics. So if you want to say hello, Greg.
Good morning.
Great.
Great.
Do you want us to do the Yukon introductions now, or would you just like us to go right through our Yukon Health stuff?
What are there a lot of, I mean, I know Gail is on.
Yes, Gail,
I
Joanne,
think we're gonna skip.
Okay.
We'll do that at the
we see these people all the time up here.
I was going to say, it's the usual suspects here joining us today. So thank you all today. And just to help walk you through this, Chad is going to be walking through all the questions except number 2. I'm going to take number 2. So would you mind, shall I share my screen, or would you like to go from the information that you have? Whatever's easier for you.
I have the memo in front of me. I don't know if other folks do. It probably makes sense for you to share your screen.
Okay, I will share it now.
Thank you.
Okay, can everyone see this okay?
Now we can. Yep. So
Okay,
the question was sort of the core question. What are you asking us for?
So I guess I'll just start in there. And the instructions were just to paraphrase the question. So I will do that because that was requested, not because I don't believe you guys can read. But question number 1 is, what's the 27 budgetary ask and how does that break down by, policy, what's being requested, for wage increases and then programmatic assistance. So, number 1, we want to highlight that while it's going to be extremely challenging to operate our facility in line with the enacted budget. We are committed to doing that. So we are committed to working with the originally enacted 139.3 million. That said, there is the union negotiation going on right now. And I understand there's maybe a CBAC framework out there. So we are watching that. Any collective bargaining increases, we are asking that they be funded. And what we have projected is a 3% increase in salary for our employees would have about a $50.4 million impact on us. There's about $7.5 million in the budget for inflationary increases. And that would leave us with the $42.9 million difference or hole at 3% level. If a 4.5% increase in salary for all our employees was agreed upon, the impact would be about 63.2 million. And then minus that 7.5 would leave us with the $55.7 million hole. We're asking that those be funded. In the latter case, that would bring our total block grant to 195 million. And those wage increases would cover both fiscal years 26 and 27. To be clear, Yukon Health supports our workforce being paid fairly and competitively, but our request is that the state fund the full cost of any pay increases it negotiates, as it does for nearly every other state agency.
Just one or two follow-up questions to that. First, you use this word, you project a 3% increase. That doesn't project in that instance does it imply that you anticipate that that was what the result would be? I suspect it does not. I just wanted to be clear.
Again, when we started,
the rumor in the halls is closer to 4.5%.
That's correct. When we started, our assumption was we were hoping to get this done at 3%. And then we're hearing the same thing, closer to 4.5 total.
Right.
You want to scroll to the table? Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
so the column on the left is how the columns add if it were a 3% increase. The right is a 4.5% increase. And the difference is between 182 or 195 and 138, which is what is in the governor's midterm proposed, is sort of what you're asking for. Or is your ask the difference between that and the approved budget, I guess, 139.3? Not much different, but a little different, right?
Right. The recommended reduction between the approved and then the governor's current budget is fairly small. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, we're asking that the CBAC raises be funded basically.
Yeah, one last question, then I'll call on Representative Nuccio, whose hand is up. So the 42 million or the 55 million based on the percentage, does that represent 2 years of wage increases in 1 year? In other words, the ongoing impact is half, the annual impact is half of those dollar amounts? Because I mean, you said that this applies to both fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27.
I believe that's per year, but I will double check on that and get back to you.
So, yeah, I mean, because I guess the question then gets to be if it's per year and we're adopting budget adjustments for fiscal year 27, I guess why I'm asking the question is like, I mean, I know if the impact of signing a new agreement is really 110, if it's 45 or 55.
I think the numbers that we have included here are for the 2 years.
But Greg, this is also not coming out of the general fund budget, is coming out of the RSA. If that agreement is made, it would be coming out of the RSA.
For both years?
It comes out in year 1. We don't budget for the second year because that unless you're saying it's retro, then it would be.
I think this agreement is retroactive, right?
it may be partial, retroactive, but we can figure that out, but don't consider adding this into the general fund budget. It's the RSA.
I mean, I appreciate that assurance. I'm just trying to figure, I'm just trying to figure
No,
out.
I'm not saying it's
Yeah, I get it.
insurance. I'm not
Yeah, no,
saying,
I get you.
all right, I'm not assuring this. I'm just saying that the wages are coming out of the RSA. And that's the discussion that's going on right now with higher ed.
Yeah,
Are they going to come out of the RSA or not?
Yeah.
That's the discussion. And I
And
don't know that
that's my
anybody's
understanding of the discussion as well. I'm just trying to ask for clarity about whether or not, what is the annualized cost of a 3 or a 4.5% increase? And is it twice 42 or is it 42? And
and
is
not
it twice
everybody-
55 or is it
and
55?
not
I
everybody
believe that
gets
is
a,
two
and,
years.
and some people are at an increase that is 3% because they've reached top steps. So
Yeah.
I would say that every person, I think every time we talk about it, we assume that every person is getting something when some people are moving within the range. And that is something that we have to remember is some people are moving within the range and some people have already met to the top of the range. They may get a top step pay increase, but it may not be what you're calculating. So just keep that in mind. Thank you. And I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I appreciate your input. I'm just trying to figure out if it's an annualized or a 2-year cost or an annualized cost.
It's it's a 2-year. This year.
And so
Wait. I'm sorry, you're saying that the 42 is a 2-year cost?
I believe so. Yes.
all right.
We should clarify that. Okay.
Yeah, why don't you, why don't you give it that to us in writing, and that would be helpful. Make sure it goes to the committee administrator and get distributed to everybody on the committee. It's a simple clarification. I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding about what the numbers represent. Representative Nuccio.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify something because I think this is something we go back and forth on all the time. The state of Connecticut does not pay for all the wages of the university or the healthcare, correct?
Correct.
Right. We just pay a block grant that goes towards your PS services, correct?
Correct.
So I don't understand why we're asking the state of Connecticut to pay 100% of your wage increase when we don't pay 100% of your salaries. There's the balance between the operations and then what the state pays you as a block grant to offset your costs. This is why I specifically asked the questions when we had DOT there. The federal block grant that we get. When there are increases, the federal government just pays the increase on the block grant that they pay. They don't.
Oh, she's frozen.
Uh-oh.
Next.
She's been having a tough time in her room.
Okay,
It's that she might, let me see if I can help her out.
okay. Well, why don't we keep going and then we'll come back when she comes back.
Yeah, we should come back to that, but and I have a clarifying question to ask around that too, but we'll get there.
I think we got the foundations of what she was trying to say.
Yeah,
So-
no, I think we've heard it.
Go ahead, Greg. It's on you.
Question number, any other questions from other committee members about collective bargaining impacts and what the overall ask is? Okay, no. So question number 2 gets to question about various line items and what we allocate to you.
Yes, thank you. So I'll take this one from here. So this one here is for all UConn Health accounts, including the governor's proposed various grants account. What are the accounts for? Who is served by the accounts? What outcome measures are used to determine success of the programs funded by the accounts? So just to give you guys an overview here, we have a few legislatively directed programs and other line items within UConn Health's budget. And first is the AHEC program, first is the operating expenses, where this line is very important. Every dollar is spent on employee salaries from the operating expenses. At UConn Health, 19% of our workforce is supported by state appropriated funding, and the remaining 81% is funded by UConn Health. So that alone is the salaries. Now, next is AHEC, which you all may be familiar with. This is the Connecticut Area Health Education Center, and this has its own dedicated line item. And what they do is it's with our medical and dental students, preparing the next generations of doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers. They mostly are focused on underrepresented areas, both urban and rural. And some of the places where both the dentists and the medical and dental students go to are listed in our responses, including Mission of Mercy, South Park Inn, Hartford North End Health and Wellness. And we have our Yukon stores. They assist DPH with climate change and other actions close to the area. Next up, and new to the line this year, is the neuromodulation treatment. You may remember this from last year in the yes. So what this is that Yukon Health will establish a center of excellence for neuromodulation treatment. Neuromodulation is the alteration of nerve activity through targeted delivery of stimulus. Essentially what it is, it's like a device, medical implant device that is attached to the vagus nerve near the neck, and it provides shocks to people who have stroke, and it's controlled out of the body by a remote. And what it does is it helps to stimulate the nerves that are otherwise dead due to stroke. And what it does is it essentially gives people their lives back from stroke and recovery. This particular program is targeted at veterans, and the plan was to get 10 veterans into this program and working on them. And it was also done with the help of the Veterans with Disabilities Task Force last session, and many people in the legislature to see that to fruition. So that's what that program is. And next up is the endometriosis data repository program. This started a couple of sessions ago with endometriosis research with one of our joint programs with Yukon Health and Jackson Labs, and it's called EndoRise. And what they do is essentially create both a data and a specimen biorepository. The data is housed at Yukon Health. The biological specimens are housed at JAX in their laboratories and freezers. And essentially what they do is they collect all of the data, both data and the specimens, and help to figure out causes of endometriosis. There's a lot of questions in this field with not a lot of answers. So this program helps to target that. Next up is the migraine study, which came through the budget last session. And it is a study of migraine treatment, and it's going to be performed by Yukon Health's Department of Neurology. And also in this one, targeting both women and veterans, because those two groups of the population are generally underserved, but have a great deal of problems, and it's hard to figure out how and why. And then finally, the final program is the Poison Control Center, which has been housed at Yukon Health for many, many years. And what it does is operates the 24-hour poison control hotline, which is free to anyone to use. You call up when you have a medical emergency involving poison. And this supports, the funding here supports 2 positions at the Poison Control Center. And those are our programs in that section, and how we measure the outcomes. Progress and outcomes are managed individually within each program's leadership structure and annual financial reviews.
Yeah, Taylor's gonna have them come look, because, okay.
Hey,
Thank
you're
you.
back.
So I'm happy
Marie.
to address
Sorry.
any of the
I'm so
programs.
sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't on mute.
It's
Sorry.
okay. Marie, did you want to finish? Were you finished?
That was the final one, and I'm happy to elaborate wherever I can on any of the programs.
Yeah. So one question I just wanted to act for clarification. The governor takes, I think he was taking 20% of what he describes as legislative grants, but does that only apply? Well, it looks like it might apply to the endometriosis
Yes.
project and the migraine project.
Every single project, yes, with the exception of AHEC, and the operating expenses. It applies to the endometriosis plan, migraine, and the newly appropriated neuromodulation.
Okay. Are there any other questions about the line items? All right, so good news, I guess, is the third question is also about projections for employee wage increases, and Representative Nuccio is back, and so I think she had finished her question, but you can, and I don't know if you can remember her question, but I can't remember, but you can answer her question as you go through the response for question 3. Her question was about what portion of your workforce is paid for by state appropriated dollars versus other revenues, I think.
Correct. So, I think we had is about 19% of our workforce is supported with state funding, leaving about 81% funded by, our operations.
Okay. And the breakdown, I guess we did it as a percentage of wage increases between the dollar amounts. How do those percentages break down on staff relate to the increases, the distribution of the increase?
Sure. So we broke ours down by patient facing and non-patient facing. So clinical versus academic research. Excuse me. So on screen, you've got the 3% breakdown. 32.1% is clinical, or 32.1 million rather is clinical. 18.3 would be academic and research. Extending that out to the 4.5%, the estimate would be about 40.2 million for clinical and 23 million for academic research.
Yeah. I know that the collective bargaining agreement has not been finalized, and so it's probably premature to say that half of it comes from fiscal, is related to costs in fiscal year 26, which is the current fiscal year, and half of it is in fiscal year 27, which starts on July 1st. But just for the basis of my question, I'll phrase it that way. How do you recover, let's say half the cost is for fiscal year 26 and 81% of that cost comes from your other revenue sources. How do you retroactively collect increases in patient bills or clinical revenues for a cost that is for a collective bargaining agreement that's retroactive to July 1st of 26? You can't, right?
Correct. We can't. We started our fiscal year 26 with a commitment to the governor to get the clinical enterprise to basically stand on its own. We dropped the original funding we were expecting and started the year at a deficit. We've closed that hole substantially, but this is something that, especially this late in the year, there's no way that we could close that hole.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions about their response to question number 3? If not, we can move on to questions, the final, it looks like final 2 questions. Hospital tax, relating to Waterbury.
Sure. So the governor's proposal exempts Waterbury from paying the hospital tax. This exemption will provide financial relief during the hospital's recovery and transition period, which we believe will be at least 5 years. It's anticipated that Waterbury, when it becomes profitable, will return to paying into the hospital tax. At the same time, they will still remain eligible to receive funds from the hospital tax supplemental payment, helping support operational stability, viability, and maintaining patient care services. Prospect hospitals, including Waterbury, were not members of the CHA.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I apologize again. I'm driving, so I can't get my hand up, but I want to stick to Waterbury for a second. Has there been a look at whether or not it is legal for Waterbury to get paid out of the hospital tax settlement if they're not paying into it? So that's something I think that has not been answered in fullness on where the federal government is going to be relative to Waterbury receiving any of these dollars and not paying in.
And Mr. Chair, can I just pipe
Yeah,
in?
why don't you go ahead?
I'm not driving, but
Representative Walker.
I don't
You're
have.
not what, but you.
I just also want to point out the fact that we are negotiating this still. Just like the budget, everything is a proposed, and we haven't gone through all of it. So the proposal from the governor's office is as as we heard in the answer. But again, it is not conclusive yet. We still haven't gotten those foundations yet. So I guess my co-chair is giving her concerns, but again, it is still under negotiation. So I just want to make sure we are not debating something that's not firm
Yeah.
yet.
Understood. I don't know if there's if the folks from Yukon Health have any light to share on that. They're, as I understand it, you guys are finance guys, not attorneys. But
Really not an attorney, and unfortunately, no updates other than what folks have shared.
yeah, all right. Thank you for raising the concerns. I mean, this this is not typically a question that comes up in this subcommittee, and so it's just good to be aware of. And then, are there any other questions about that then from members of the committee?
Yes, can I ask,
Yeah.
what percentage of Waterbury's patient mix is Medicaid?
I believe it's around 20%.
It's 20%. Really? I thought it was.
Roughly.
I thought it was
I
higher.
can try to get a more exact number, but
Okay, all right, so 20%, okay. Okay, thank you.
yep.
And does that 20% mix factor into the background information provided on the 340B program? I mean,
It does
among other
not.
things?
It does not for a couple of reasons. Each
Okay.
hospital files independently. And right now, Waterbury coming out of Prospect was still a for-profit, so they were not eligible for 340B.
Okay. Do members, like, this is also a topic that typically is not discussed in my subcommittee, and about which I will confess I know very little about, but is there anything, if folks who serve on have any questions about this, now's the time to ask.
Could I ask, could you explain to us the benefit of 340B, please?
340B allows us to buy drugs at drastically reduced prices.
And that would be for Yukon Health
For John Dempsey
and
Hospital,
Waterbury,
yes.
for John Dempsey Hospital, okay.
Yep.
And when you say, can you give us an example?
Not off the top of my head with a specific drug, but I can tell you it can be 20% of the normal cost or lower sometimes. So, and it's especially beneficial for what they call orphan drugs, which are drugs typically used to treat only one patient disease. So typically cancer drugs are orphan drugs.
Mhm.
And as you know, cancer drugs are extremely expensive. So this really knocks down the price, which allows us to operate more efficiently. And then we continue to charge basically at a regular rate, and the price differential is thrown back into operations to fund, continued care, expansion of care, education programs, basically community benefit type stuff.
So wait a minute,
Hey,
You
Kathy,
are, oh my
Kathy.
God.
Stop. Can I finish my questions,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah, go ahead, Representative Walker, finish your
Thank you.
question, then I'll call on
Yeah.
other folks.
So with Yukon Health right now, are you participating in 340B program?
Yes.
You are, okay, all right. So this Waterbury Hospital is an outlier right now because of that circumstance. Okay. Okay, so when you acquire Waterbury Hospital, won't it be able to utilize the 340B that Yukon Health has?
They will have their own should they qualify. So yes, our goal would be to get them stood up to qualify. There are some thresholds that you have to meet. So you have to serve a certain percentage of the Medicaid population, like your patient days have to be a certain percentage. And then that has to go on to your Medicare cost report.
Okay.
Once that's verified, you can become program eligible. So they're a little bit away from being able to qualify, but yeah, we hope to get them up.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, I'm gonna call on Senator Austin and then Senator Summers.
So,
Senator Austin?
Hi, how are you? Again, in my car traveling. But the 340B program significantly decreases the cost of prescription drugs, in particular, those drugs that are considered orphan drugs. But you just said that you then charge the regular rate and use the differential between the 340B decrease and what you charge for that drug to pay for other programs. So the decrease in the cost of the drugs does not impact the what the person is charged. Is that what you said?
It's complex. I was trying to summarize it.
That's the gist of it, though. That's how it works. That's how it works in the federally qualified and everything else.
But yes, I mean, some of our pricing does depend on the individual drug purchase price, but again, it gets pretty technical, so I should probably not try to summarize it.
No, you summarized it. You summarized it well, Kathy. That's basically, they get a discounted price from the federal government. They don't give that discounted price to the person who's getting the drug. They use the money, the difference between what they pay for the drug and what they charge the customer for quote unquote other priorities, other projects, other funding. Like that's how it's done for the federally qualified health centers. That's how it's done for the hospitals. And, it's a reason why there's been a lot of, visibility into the 340B programs, because it saves the agency money, but not necessarily the person getting the drug.
And that's the problem that I have with this, because I was not under that impression. So I have more questions on this, but that's exactly my problem. So thank you. I will have further questions on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Austin. Senator Summers?
Thank you for calling on me. I guess, are we raising our hand to be called on, or are we just speaking? I'm not really
You
clear.
are, unless you're in the car and can't raise your hand.
Okay.
But
Okay. So I just wanted to speak on the 340B. I come from that world, and I can give you a concrete example. So epinephrine, for example, is about $400, but the price for 340B is 15 cents. So the differential does not go to the patient, which I have a hard time with. It goes back to the hospital or the 340B facility, and they can use it as they see fit. One of the big issues that the pharmaceutical companies have been having, and I'm not defending them, I'm just sort of putting this out there, is that was really intended to go back for care, for community outreach, for health, but many of our FQHCs, et cetera, are using it for operational expenses, for adding on to their facility. So you're taking from one, it's not going to the end user, and it's a way. Now there's all these new organizations that go find people that are in 340B, and it has exploded. It was originally designed for the most vulnerable communities, but now there are organizations that get paid to go find 340B patients. It's a very complicated issue, and I have real issues with that. And I have issues with the fact that, and I guess it's still under negotiation, we all know that, but I find it really hard to believe that a hospital that's not paying into a system with a hospital tax would be the recipient of the return from the federal government. So I know that's under negotiations. I think that's going to be a long-term, a lot of questions on that. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I do have significant issues with that. If Waterbury is not going to be paying into the hospital tax, but wants to be a recipient, there's many hospitals that are barely making it that do pay in and that are the recipients, but they are paying in. So we'll see what happens with the governor's negotiations. I know the Hospital Association is absolutely against that also. So I'm just putting that out there for people to recognize when we're going through this process. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree 100% with Heather.
Thank you. We don't often debate 340, the federal programs like this, but the part that stands out to me, and I guess it's relevant to us here today, is whether or not UConn Health continues to qualify for the 340B program there's a sentence here that says a loss of 340B program eligibility impact is estimated at a revenue loss of close to $60 million in the clinical enterprise. So educate me about why, like, are we worried about losing the 340B program at UConn Health? Why is this offered as background here?
Well, it's offered because it's not really factored into our projections yet. But yes, we are worried about, the program is at risk. Again, I mentioned a little earlier, you qualify by meeting a certain percentage threshold, disproportionate share days, Medicaid days. That threshold is 11.75%. I believe we are currently running for this fiscal year around 10.75%. So we're roughly a full percentage point lower. And we have, about 3 months to make that up. So, that is a significant risk. We have some plans. We're working on a couple of things with OPM. But yeah.
So are you projecting that you'll be able to achieve that positive? I guess I'll use positive in the fiscal term only, that that you'll be able to achieve the criteria to continue to be eligible for the program, and don't anticipate a $58 million revenue loss, or is the $58 million potential revenue loss is not built into your request for funding, right?
It's not currently in our request for funding, correct? It was not anticipated at the beginning of the last biennium. And then to your question about what we're doing right now, yeah, we're working very hard with OPM on a project to maybe move over the SolNet beds. I don't know if you've seen that in the press, or you guys, I think, voted on something related to that last week. But were we to bring those beds on, and those days on for the last couple months of the year, I think that would push us over the top of the threshold. So that's what we're all working on, OPM, DSS, DCF, and ourselves.
Right. And then there's also a potential loss of clinical revenue due to Medicaid and Medicare. And I'm sorry, before we move on, Representative Nuccio, you have your hand up.
Sorry, yeah, working between phone and the computer here. So I guess my question is, why do you think we're at risk of losing the 340B for UConn? I understand it not being part of the Waterbury because it wasn't, and the same thing with the hospital tax. You guys have assumed a new hospital and you're gonna have to go through the process to get them all put into the same thing. But what is the assumption behind the loss of the 340B? For you.
So again, it comes down to that ratio. You have to be over 11.75%. That's something that we can track as we go along during the year. So based on our current year data, we're around 10.75%. So it's a function of who's coming through the doors, basically, and who's staying at our facility and getting counted in our census.
So you're not taking enough Medicaid, is that it?
No, Chad, isn't it really the growth in the number of patients that we're seeing is on the commercial side?
It's the growth in the number of patients we're seeing. It's the changes in the overall demographics in the population. So coming out of COVID, when there was a lot of expansion in the Medicaid programs, that expansion is now contracting. So there are less people covered by Medicaid. So we're taking less Medicaid patients. And we've also seen a dip in those patients, number of patients coming through our ED, where we tend to admit, say, 20 to 25% of our patients come through ED admissions. So it's not something that, anybody's actively not trying to treat Medicaid patients. There just aren't as many of them coming through.
Okay, so I don't know how we go about to combat that because our Medicaid numbers have been stable in the state. Like, we've dipped a little bit since COVID, and that was just because of the recertification stuff. But we're still dancing around 1 million people. So whether or not, like, I don't know why they wouldn't be going to UConn. So I don't know. That's a quagmire. But hopefully, we can have you guys treating, an appropriate number of Medicaid patients, along with like the other hospitals to keep you in that realm. You're only about 1% off of where you need to be to maintain the program. And I guess it would matter then if maybe you could tell us, how are you using your 340B money? Like what programs are you using it for? Is it operational expenses? Like where is that funding currently going? Now, I know you don't have that now, so maybe that's something that you get for us, to understand that funding there. But I think the answer here is to make sure that you are serving enough of the Medicaid population, as our other hospitals are. You know, like you said, Waterbury at only like 20%. I was always under the impression that they served a higher Medicaid portion, especially when we keep talking about all the losses for hospitals and people blaming it on the Medicaid rates. When your Medicaid rates are, I mean, when your Medicaid people that you're serving is that low, you know, that's not driving your massive rates. So this is definitely information I think that might be new for all of us.
Get that.
Okay.
So, sorry,
Sounded more like a
sorry.
comment, but maybe a place for you to provide some additional information either after this, or if you have, Greg, did you have something you wanted to
Yeah,
add?
just for our payer mix. So what we are noticing that we are starting to see more of an aging population. So people 65 and over. So we are seeing more Medicare people. Our Medicaid is dropping off slowly, but we are seeing an increase in our people without insurance. So we're seeing that growth. So obviously people, you know, like Chad mentioned, people are coming off of Medicaid, you know, they don't have insurance, but we're still accepting them. So we're seeing that growth. And then also we're seeing our Anthem patients, we're seeing a slight growth in that. So all that kind of is our reducing our, you know, Medicaid percents.
Thank you.
So
I
I
think,
would,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No,
Sorry,
did you
Greg.
have another? No, I didn't know you had anything more to say, but you go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Again, though, I think you just said something that is kind of piquing my interest for more data, right? Because our uninsured population in the state of Connecticut has been stable for a long time, and it's not a big number. So if you're saying that we have uninsured people, that is increasing it, you know, like I'm just hearing things that don't match up to the data that I see at a state level. So if we're saying now that it's that the uninsured, I understand the Medicare switch, people aging over 65, but there's also a large portion of people who are Medicare, Medicaid qualified. So they have both. So I would expect to see some stability in that. And the uninsured population is, again, as a percentage of the state of Connecticut, extremely small. So maybe it would be useful to see all of your patient stat numbers to understand it.
Okay.
Right. Representative Walker.
Yeah, thank you. This is an interesting conversation because if you read your next paragraph down there, you talk about the Affordable Care Act and the impact that is having on your Medicaid population. And we are seeing some clear issues with the fact that a lot of people are losing health care for a variety of things that have been shifted in Washington. And we haven't really gotten updated numbers. So I think Representative Nuccio is correct. We need to look at what has the trend been for the last 6 months, because I know Department of Social Services has been talking about that a lot of people have been going to FQHCs or different other areas to try and seek healthcare. And is that the shift that we're seeing all around the state? And how do we put it back into the area where we want it to be? So I appreciate the fact that you're saying that your Medicaid population is down. So has this Medicaid population, the number for UConn for your Medicaid population is how much? What did you say? 20? No, 20% was Waterbury. What is yours? What is yours at UConn?
I think they said 10.
I think we're in the
10.75%.
23-24% range.
24%.
25 or 24% range?
23-24.
Okay, so you're at the 23-24%. Okay.
Yeah, but I'll confirm that.
Yeah, I would like to get a confirmation of that, because some of this is starting to add up in the paths that are being taken that probably have not been shared with us, and I think it's important that we know them. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Representative Dathan.
Thank you. Thinking along the sort of sort of thought process here. Do you have like an analysis of your uncompensated care for the last couple of years? And also your bad debt expense, for the last couple of years, from patients, um, unable to pay and you having to write off? Um, do you have any sort of analyses on that?
Uh, yes, but not handy.
No, I totally understand it's not handy.
Yeah,
Sorry to be, I didn't mean it like I need it now. Would you be
sorry,
able
first
to
timer here.
No, 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 no. If you could share that with the administrator, I think that would be useful. And I think, one of the assumptions you have going here is the number of patients going from, the sort of normal primary care appointments or specialist appointments to urgent care. I would like to get an understanding about sort of the level of patient, and I don't know if it's by revenue because if so you could think of more acuity type things rather than whole patient numbers, but understanding the number of patients, over time that, are using urgent care services as a percentage of total care. Because I think this is something we're going to have to, and excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I'm kind of talking out of turn here, but I think this is something we're really going to have to watch because right now we're probably not seeing a whole lot of negative effect of the big HR1 bill. And I think we're going to see in next year's budget discussion, if I get reelected, we'll be talking, I'll be asking the same questions and where we are as a percentage because I am hearing anecdotally down here that folks are not getting their, because they're nervous to go into their, primary care appointments, because they think they've lost their Medicaid and starting to go to urgent care. But I think next year we're really going to be seeing that as, the effects of the implementation date of January. So I think I'd like to have an idea of where we are right now set for a baseline. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one question different than sort of what everybody's been asking about with
Okay.
Medicaid and Medicare. Relative to the state employee population, there's been a push to move more of the state employee, retiree and active healthcare usage into, Yukon Health. Have you noticed any change relative to that?
We are definitely seeing an older population. Yes.
And the older population, are a lot of those state employee retirees?
Yes, they're on the Aetna plan.
Thank you. I think that, can we get those numbers, please?
Sure. And then,
Thank
sorry, and I was wrong about the Medicaid percent. We're at 19%.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the state employees generally are not on Medicaid. They are on Medicare with a combination with that and Aetna, but I'd like to have those numbers. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about the prepared answers that were provided today? Or is there anybody else who's got a question that they would like to pose to Yukon Health at this point? Representative Dathan.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have a question that I forgot to ask during the regular session last time. And I'm just wondering if we have a schedule of sort of federal grants, and if you've already sent this, I'd appreciate it, mostly around research, not necessarily around other things. I'd like to get an understanding of kind of maybe our baseline for fiscal year 24, where we ended up in fiscal year 25, and what we expect to see in 26 and 27, solely around research grants. And then also, if you've had and I think you had mentioned this in your presentation, you had a drop off of people, applying to like PhD, programs or residencies or other sort of research-based work with you all over the last couple of years. And I just want to understand where we are with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was in the other half of UConn's responses. But
Oh, okay.
I know they do a lot of that work at UConn Health too. So
Yeah, that's why
yeah.
I saw it on one side, but I didn't see it on the
Yeah.
other and was thinking about that over the weekend.
Yeah, they're typically combined. We usually report
they
them
are.
together, but we can break it out as well.
Thank you, Joanne. You're
You're
always
welcome.
on top of it. Thanks. And thank you for your whole team's presentation. You guys do great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, I guess not. Joanne, Gail, Patrick, is your team assembled for the stores in the regional campuses? Or do you want to, maybe, I know if members want to, we're about 10 minutes ahead of schedule. That's not very much ahead of schedule, but people want to roll into the next section?
I think we
No.
have our team. Are you guys ready? Premier, Rika,
Okay.
Nathan? Okay.
The longer document.
It is, but it's not 90 pages.
Not 90 pages. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So do you, so for the folks for the stores and regional campuses, academic side, do you want to introduce yourselves and then we can start working our way through your responses to the questions?
Sure. Do you want us to, why don't we just kick it over to Premier, who can tell us who he is and his role, and then we'll kick it to Rika and then Nathan. Go ahead, Premier.
Good morning. My name is Pamir Alpay. I'm the interim provost for the university and the executive vice president for academic affairs. I'm a materials engineer and a physicist by training. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Go ahead, Rika. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rika Wren. I'm the interim vice president for finance. I've been at UConn for over 26 years now, so excited to chat with you all today.
Hi, everybody. This is Nathan First. I'm the vice president for student life and enrollment. It's good to see many of you again.
And that's our team, Greg.
Okay, great. First question was around your sort of bottom line budget ask. Who wants to?
We can share would you like us to share the document on screen?
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
While we're sharing here, I'll go ahead and get us started. So our total request for fiscal year 27 is $59.2 million, and that's made up of multiple components. Oh, we lost the share there. Pat, you're sharing your files. All right, there we go again. So it's made up of multiple components. First, it's made up of a request to support our student success initiatives, financial aid specifically for our students to help to retain and graduate additional students. Some technology to also assist us in tracking and supporting those students as well and getting them through to the point of graduation. We requested funds to help to protect our research enterprise, $6.1 million, and that will help us with some funds for a few of our undergrads, but primarily graduate students to help to plug the gap that has been left by some of the terminated grants that we received over the last year, as well as the slowdown in new research or grant awards that has been happening over the last year. The next piece that we are requesting funds for is our top tier faculty investment. This is year one of the investment that we are seeking to help to hire 10 faculty over 5 years. This is the first year request of $4 million to help to get us to the point of being invited into an association of research universities. And then the last piece, and we have a couple different numbers there we're sharing with you, is the additional support for the wage increases. We've shown it at the 3% amount as well as the 4.5% amount. The $59.2 million number, as I've started at the beginning, includes the 4.5% per year wage increase. Please keep in mind that's 2 years of wage increases because this is a fiscal year 27 request. We're under the understanding that when these collective bargaining agreements are finally negotiated, that they will be inclusive of fiscal year 26, and that we will need to then absorb 2 years of wage increases into our fiscal year 27 budget. And so that's why that number includes 2 years. So in total, that $59.2 million ask brings us to a total request of 312.7, which is still lower than our fiscal year 25 amount. So I will stop there. There's a lot more detail in the document as background for each piece of those requests, and happy to answer any questions on that.
Yeah, the fiscal year 25, just a benchmark, fiscal year 25, total state support was $319 million.
That's correct.
Right. And so of these dollar amounts, I'll use the 4.5% side, I guess just as an example of the $59.2 million increase in request. And that's an increase over the fiscal year 27 approved state budget.
That's
right?
correct.
Right. That's all but well 49.3 of that is the increase in wages, the cumulative increases for wages, and the other 10 million, roughly $10 million is for the other items that you specified when you went through the list.
You're close. It's just an ask of 37.1 on the wage increases. And the enacted state budget already includes $12.2 million towards the wage increase costs. So we're only asking for the difference.
Got it. Understood. Yeah, I forgot the 12.2, but I see the math now. Okay. And interestingly enough, I mean, just want to say that, not only is the fiscal year 25 appropriation larger, that of course includes ARPA dollars, just to be clear. Fiscal year 27 state support is $15 million less than the current fiscal year.
That is correct. You can see there at the top of the chart, our fiscal year 26 state support was up at 268.2 versus the enacted state support for 27 was about $15 million less.
Right. But the enacted state budget, you also say, includes $12.2 million extra for inflationary costs.
That's correct.
But it's $15 million, but the overall dollar amount is $15 million less.
That's correct.
All right. I think I followed the math.
Yeah.
I'm not sure my 7th grader could follow that math, but I think I get it. Representative Dathan?
Thank you. Just wanted to double check with the wage increase. Like UConn Health, you guys don't negotiate the labor contracts, a part of that. That's what is done by the state, and then they tell you what the increase is.
Sort of. We have the ability to negotiate directly with 2 of the unions. The rest of them are part of the CBAC agreement. And I'm not in the HR group of individuals, so I don't want to get into the details, but
So for materiality purposes, what dollar percentage do you all have the ability to negotiate over? If you were to say, you can say 2 unions, but if the 2 unions only have, a small number of members and it's not very material, then it's a little different. So I'm just trying to understand what sort of control UConn has over these increases.
No, that's a great question. Thank you for that. No, the majority of our employees are in the 2 unions that we do have the ability to negotiate directly with, UPPI and AAUP. I don't know the percentage right off the top of my head, but it is.
That's
the
okay.
majority.
If it's a majority, then that gives that sort of
Yeah, it
perspective
is.
in our
It
head.
certainly is. But I would just add that, when the rest of the state settles at, the CBAC agreement settles at a certain percentage, it puts us in quite the pickle.
Arbitration says that
yeah.
you're going to have to pay the same amount. I get that.
You're
That's
exactly
totally,
right. Yep.
yeah. Anyway,
Thank
okay.
you.
Thank you so much.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you. I'm not going to put my camera on because I'm just having far too many issues today. So I'm trying to minimize the wavelengths. So I'm going to ask the same basic question that I asked of UConn Health. The majority of your salaries are paid for by you, correct? And then you get a block grant that offsets those salaries from the state of Connecticut, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the increase would be in the block grant. I struggle with this whole idea that all the increases have to come, the total amount of the increase comes from the state, because that's not how it functions in every other area that we have supplemental income, like the DOT and stuff like that. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the increase that happened in 2026 was once again something that was negotiated as a one-time amount to help meet a deficiency in UConn's budget, correct? So it's not a reduction of your block grant. It's a reduction of money that was provided to help UConn get over a bump again, correct?
You're talking about the final negotiated 268.2 that we received in fiscal year 26?
Correct.
It wasn't, to my knowledge, it wasn't specified in the state budget bill that was one-time funding. Our assumption is that, or was that was going to come to us as permanent funding, but then it was going to be reduced in fiscal year 27.
Okay, I recall that differently, just that I know the number was lower in the original budget, and then it was bumped up to help UConn meet some loss that they had, but it was never presented to me that it was ongoing, because that would just mean we would have to change your block grant, which that did not happen. The block grant stayed. So the block grant, I believe, accounts for, that's the 12.2 million increase, for the increase of your block grant by the expected contract increase, I believe.
Yeah, we could probably get into this offline, but the fiscal year 26 amount did include some inflationary expenses or inflationary funds on top of the block grant. The inflationary funds in fiscal year 26 were about $7 million. So that would have covered $7 million of our total collective bargaining increase cost in fiscal year 26, but the rest of it was labeled as block grant.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to be sure, again, I struggle fundamentally with the idea that UConn always comes to us and says, if the state negotiates, or, you just said you guys have the majority of the UConn negotiations, right? I always tell UConn, you guys should ask to come out of CBAC 100% and just negotiate your own. But the idea that the state of Connecticut has to pay for all the increases for all of your professors when we only give you a block grant that covers X amount. I'm an accountant, I struggle with that math. So that's all. Thank you very much.
It's a good debate to have. I'm always glad to do this. If the state doesn't provide you resources to pay for the increase, who does?
Yeah, so that's another question that we have gotten into in here, how we have worked to diversify our revenue streams over the last several years to be able to absorb these additional costs. We have increased our tuition and fee revenues. I don't know if, Pat, whether you want to scroll down to that question, and I can go ahead and answer it now. We have worked to increase our tuition and fee revenues through admitting additional students, retaining additional students, and that, sorry, I just want to get us there to the question so you can see the chart that we're showing in that question. A significant chunk of our revenues are now coming from our tuition and fees from our students. I believe it's 55, 52%. He's still scrolling here.
I'm sorry to make you jump ahead, but it
Yeah, no,
just
no,
seems
no,
the
it's
obvious next
it's
question.
certainly appropriate to go ahead and answer the question now. It's question number 9 in the list there, Pat. So I'm sorry, so 55% of our, there we go, 55% of our revenues are now coming from students. And through that growth of new students, as well as the change in our residency mix, as well as the increase in our tuition and fee rates over the last several years, you can see that shift from 51% to 55% since just fiscal year 22. You can see the the decline and the state support as a percent of our total budget. As well, we have been working to increase the gray part of that box as well, that other revenue. We have been growing our philanthropy significantly, and that we're working through our Because of UConn campaign to bring in additional gift dollars. But as you're all aware, we get those pledges, and then we have to wait for the actual cash to come in to be able to use that to help our budget gap, as well as a lot of those revenues that are coming in from gifts are coming in for very specific purposes. So if a donor gives us a gift and it's for something very specific that we're not already doing, then that doesn't help our bottom line budget gap. But we are looking to get as much of those dollars for things that, such as financial aid to help our students, and that really helps, our total bottom line. But you can see there in the pie as well, we are working to diversify those revenues. We're just not able to do it as quick as what has been imagined or envisioned through the reduction in our state support, and that we're just struggling to fill that gap as quickly as what our state support has been dropping over the last several years. And so we still have that gap that we're looking for the state to help us to fund over the next several years.
Yeah, I mean, I think an important component to just lay it out there is like, it's not just how much are we providing you on a year-to-year basis, but what does that trend line look like? And when I look at, you're showing me just 4 years, 26 to 22, the shift, part of that comes from increasing enrollment. And that's sort of new revenue. Part of that comes from tuition and fee increases, right?
That's correct.
We're making folks sort of pay more to attend the university. I mean, frankly, when I came into the General Assembly about 15 years ago, I think that the 13% or 15% that you have here of revenue was closer to 25%. And I would have been happy to sort of set a formula that said, this is the level of support that we're providing to the university, and let's try to keep it there. But the trend line is sort of irrefutable. It has been declining. And that is particularly troublesome since we know that folks, when they come out of college, are struggling to pay off their debts. We know that increased enrollment, increased tuition and fees sort of are hindrances to access to post-secondary education. And we know that our employers are increasingly concerned about where their workforce is going to come from. So this is the appropriate debate for this subcommittee. How much is the right amount to subsidize the operations of the University of Connecticut? And I see Representative Nuccio's hand is up, and so I'm sure she will have something to add on this point. Representative Nuccio.
Representative Haddad, you're learning me very well. So, again, I said this earlier to somebody else. We have to be very careful how you're looking at this, right? First of all, 2022, did that number also include all the ARPA money? We keep talking about how this reduction in state support, the amount of money the state of Connecticut has given UConn has done nothing but grown, right? You have to talk about both sides of the equation. Okay, again, accountant here. Your expenses have grown exponentially, which is why it looks like the state of Connecticut support is less. It's not. The state of Connecticut, if you look at what the state of Connecticut has been giving UConn, with the exception of the ARPA money, your block grant has done nothing but grow. So your expenses are growing, which means the portion, the simple division on this is your expenses divided by how much the state support is, get you to a lesser percentage, not because the state of Connecticut is paying you less money. It's the other side of the equation on this. And also, if you're taking, like you're starting at 2022, there was significant ARPA money and also, federal money that was going to UConn that, again, was told time and time countless again that it was one-time money. So to include that and not break out the ARPA piece, if that's not being done here, I think is a little disingenuous.
So I would just offer up, maybe if you go back a little bit further, you look at a 10-year picture, fiscal year 16, and you look dollar for dollar, we're relatively flat in the amount of our state funding for, what we received in fiscal 16 compared to what's being proposed for fiscal year 27. And so you think about, what's happened during that period of time and how we have grown, and as well as, the responsibilities that we have taken on for the state. And that's a big ask for the state, right? So you think about since 2016, and I haven't added up all the percentages, but there's a lot of collective bargaining increases that happened in there since 2016. So that alone would show that, if we were just adding collective bargaining increases every year to our block grant that we received in 2016, we would be really behind in the amount of funding that we're getting from the state. And we certainly understand the difficulties of the state. And so I don't want to be sitting here not recognizing the challenges that the state has in balancing their budget. And, we have been looking to, as I said, diversify our revenues because we recognize that total expenses are growing, things that we don't have control over, right? In addition to collective bargaining increases, there are other inflationary expenses that we just don't have control over in our budget and things that we have to do. So we have been working to grow those additional revenue streams. We're just not able to do it as fast as what the amount of state support has been decreased in our budget over that period of time. And we are very cognizant of how much the students are paying and the affordability of our students and not wanting to put that full gap that we are feeling in our budget onto the backs of the students and making it so that, an education at UConn is not affordable per student. So we're trying to balance all of those things and looking at our budget and really taking the hard look at, all of our expenses to try to pull out anything that is just not necessary at this point in time. I think that, you hear and see a lot of feedback on that in the news and the growing pains of that and moving through that. But we are doing that hard work and looking at our class sizes and, anything possible that we can to be able to find those savings. But we're at a point where we have to be very careful when we do that because we might be jeopardizing the future success of the institution if we continue to approach things in that manner. And I do think that one of the other questions in this document does certainly speak to that as well.
I would agree. I think part of the problem here is, as you said, you're seeing it in the national press, you're seeing it across the board. The cost of higher education has just gotten so exorbitant. It is, I just read an article on the return that you can expect for having a higher level degree, et cetera. And it's dropping, right? Because the cost is so high. So I think we have to start thinking outside the box of just how do we continue to pay higher ed and everything more money and think of how we can provide a higher ed education at a better cost value for people. If you take what a UConn student pays, their portion of the bill, and then you add in the fact that, not from OLR across the board, we subsidize over $20,000 per student and add that to what they're paying. And you look at that final cost of an education, it's really crazy high, and we have to start thinking about how we provide higher education at a better value for people. And I think that's part of the problem that a lot of people we don't talk about. So I have IT people here to hopefully fix my computer. So I'm going to stop asking questions for now, Greg. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Representative Nuccio.
And if I may, I just want to throw out a fact, a study that we did not do. I believe Georgetown University did it. I might be messing up my source exactly, but it was a recent study that came out that showed that UConn still has a really high return on investment. It's $2.6 million over a 40-year career, and does still rate pretty high. So we're very proud of that, and certainly want to continue to show that, a UConn investment that still does, elicit that type of response. And so we're working hard to make sure that our product that we are providing our students is still a quality product, so that we can ensure that that return on investment continues for our students.
Yeah, and I just will add just a couple of quick statistics and then call on Representative Dathan. According to some information that I've received from an ongoing project that I have with our Office of Fiscal Analysis, ongoing state support, the block grant, you said has been flat since 2016. This shows that it's been flat since 2010. The amount raised from students in tuition and fees has increased over that same amount of time by 153%. The percent of total support of state support, and this includes fringe support, as a percent of your total revenues has declined from 32% to just 13% over that time period. And so this is not atypical of what we see around the country. I think that one of the curious things is that there seems to be, to me, to be a pretty clear inverse relationship between the investment of state dollars in public universities here in Connecticut and also nationally, and the return on investment that people perceive to get. So it's not surprising that as state investment has declined, the amount that students pay is increased. The market forces are what they will. You work in a market economy, and what you pay for labor or goods, of course, is going to increase over 16 years. Representative Dathan.
Thank you so much. And you touched upon what I was going to say in reaction, and I appreciate all the conversations here. And I can remember, these pre-COVID budgets back in 19 when we were talking about this, and I believe that they are pretty flat. And we do have to remember that during the COVID time, there were also one-off expenses that were happening to accommodate for the pandemic. But I think, instead of us sitting here talking about the sort of, the revenues and the percentages here, I think we should also look at the cost. And, from what I remember hearing in the last presentation, it seemed like when we were comparing the sort of cost basis of UConn on a per student basis, I think it was a lot lower than a lot of our neighbors. So it sounded like to me that, and I don't know what sort of analysis the university has done, but it sounds like to me that, the money invested is going and being spent in a way that's pretty economical compared to some of the counterparts around the country. And, it seems to me that the number of students that are staying in the state of Connecticut comparatively to our neighbors in the Northeast and other states is really high, which means most of these people are working and paying taxes and providing, a thriving economy. And I think you really highlighted that in your initial 90 some odd page presentation. And that was one of my big takeaways from that. And I'm looking at Joanne right now with her big smile on her face, but I think that was one of my big takeaways. And, it is all understanding that, the return on investment on a college education is, it's a challenge because the supply of people in our country who are going to get college degrees is increasing. But the quality of education that our, flagship university is providing our state is really phenomenal. And I think my question, Mr. Chair, and not to go on and on, is really to get an understanding of that cost basis per student. What is the expenses that the university is paying per student? and where we are now compared to where we may have been, back in 2021 or 22, and maybe fiscal year 18. Because I seem to remember hearing something about that, and maybe you could just refresh my mind. And thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Dathan. Someone from UConn want to make some remarks?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the numbers recently. We certainly can go back and dig out that analysis. If I'm remembering correctly, it might have been OFA that put together that last analysis, so I can go dig that out.
And it could be OFA, and if it is, just let us know and we can follow up with them. But I do remember us talking about it, but I've had so many appropriation meetings since that last discussion, and my brain can only hold so much at this time of the year. So
yeah, we
thank
can
you.
easily dig that out for you as well. So I just made a note that we will go grab that and do some points in time, and certainly compare that to some of our peers, and to show you how we are trending.
Mhm.
Thank you. Representative Walker.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lucy. You beat me to mostly the statements, and so I'll just piggyback off of what you said. I think the sad part is we shouldn't be nickel and diming our children. The sad part is we should be trying to remember the old adage, we should want our children to have more than what we got. And by the bickering back and forth, sometimes we miss that point. And when I talk to people about UConn or just higher education in Connecticut, they're amazed because they say, wow, that's not what we get in our state. Other states are having much more punitive budgets for higher education. And it scares me because we cannot shortchange higher education, because that is our society. And I keep saying that over and over and over in almost every committee meeting when we talk about cutting back on higher education. Higher education is going to take us down, blah, blah. No, it's going to lift us up. It's going to provide us with more healthcare opportunities. It's going to provide us with a better workforce. And the fact that most of the kids that go to these schools stay here in Connecticut, which we want to do, that means that we have a better quality of society in this state than anybody else in many ways. So I don't have numbers anymore because Lucy took most of the numbers that I was going to plug, but that's okay. I'm glad to have more than one voice. But I just beg everybody to stop. I mean, yes, we have to look at the cost. Yes, we have to figure out what are the best ways of doing it, but let's not do it at the expense of reducing opportunities for the kids coming from behind us, or our children or our grandchildren or the kids in our neighborhoods. We need to have those types of this type of program, these types of education opportunities. And I mean, and the CSU plays a part in this role too. So it's like, I want us to be educated. I want us to understand. I want to have healthy conversations with people that have had the instruction and the opportunity to grow and develop. And if we turn our back to them, I feel very, very sorry for all of us, because we are missing why we are here and why we do this. Thank you. I don't have any questions, because I see a lot of things that I'm really interested in looking at later on to try and help explain some of the things, but I'm not going to nickel and dime my children. And I feel like for the state of Connecticut, I feel like all the children are mine. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative Walker, and thanks for reminding us what we're talking about here. I appreciate you're getting us
back on track.
Get back on track and reminding us what our mission is here, right? Which is not just to adopt a budget, but the one that serves people. So
thanks.
The next couple of questions are around enrollment numbers. There's a lot of charts here and numbers. I know, generally enrollment has been increasing. I see a lot of increase in out-of-state students. Didn't know if you had if folks had any questions, or if UConn, especially Nathan, had any comments to make around.
Yeah, I'll just
around this.
summarize very quickly. So in-state enrollment is relatively stable, and we've had significant growth, especially in recent years with our undergraduate enrollment, and that's been on the part of out-of-state students. We keep our eye on this very, very carefully, to the degree that in fall 2025, we had a record number of of in-state students in the entering class. So we're excited about that. But overall, across our applicant pool, we're working to ensure that we provided optimal opportunities for Connecticut residents across all of our campuses. And so we provided you a stat over years there that we maybe haven't done so much in the past that shows you the admit rate for first-year applicants across the campuses for students from in-state versus out-of-state. The other thing that I would just add is first-generation enrollment among all of our students has grown considerably. We're very, very proud of that. Nearly 9,000 undergraduate students are first generation. You know, we have to keep our eye on international student enrollments. That's a call out in light of all of the challenges that we're currently facing. And, you know, aside from that, we continue to have a very strong financial aid program. There's a lot more in subsequent questions about that. So maybe just underscore that and the importance of it in ensuring an affordable education. And that's going to be the most important instrument for us to really keep Connecticut students in the state and attending the university. It's one thing for us to offer students admission. It's another thing for us to actually make it affordable for them to attend and enroll in the university.
Right. Are there questions for Nathan about these numbers? I mean, I will just say briefly, I mean, you know, around admissions time, you know, I think all of us start getting calls from constituents who are concerned about whether their son or daughter is going to be admitted to UConn. I'm grateful that you know, the in-state enrollment has stayed relatively steady. There's, you know, fluctuations here and there, and that the strategy of increasing, I don't know if it's a strategy, but I think it's a strategy that's been promoted by the governor of increasing out-of-state enrollment at UConn, that hasn't actually, you know, hurt the number of in-state students who can who are negatively impacted. So I'm glad to see we have a high acceptance rate. I'm glad to see that the number is relatively stable. It is a smaller portion of your overall pie moving forward, but at least I can know that the number of slots is not declining. Representative Dathan?
I'm just gonna say it because I say it every year. I do think this is something we need to watch. I don't want to see Connecticut students miss an opportunity at UConn because of a need to make sure that we have enough revenue. I've seen firsthand of how this has affected other state systems, most notably the UC system in California, that in my day was 75% in-state students, and now it's like 30%. And California students are having to go other places. So I think, you know, it sounds like you guys are very focused in on this, but I want to make sure that we don't get short-sighted about this, because if we keep Connecticut flagship university mostly for Connecticut students, they're going to stay here. And that's really the end goal, is to keep the knowledge in our state. So thank you for letting me say that, and thank you for the numbers here.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments?
Representative Haddad, if I could just
Go
maybe
ahead.
add one
Yeah.
thing, and that would be that as our team builds the class every year, I remind them that we're not admitting students who enroll, we're admitting students who graduate. And so the importance of student success associated with the decisions that we make at the time of admission, that factors in as well. The second really quick point is that everything that we do is built upon the number of high school graduates in the state, and, you know, where are we drawing students and these sorts of things. There is an interest to grow the university to some degree in significant ways, depending on who you ask. And if we're going to do that in the coming years, knowing that the number of high school graduating seniors in the state of Connecticut is on the decline, we have to make sure that we've worked to diversify the source of students that we're enrolling, but at the same time ensuring opportunity for the Connecticut residents that we have, making sure that they stay in the state and we don't encounter any further brain drain. Actually, we need to do a little bit better there in terms of financial aid. I think that could help us.
Thank you. And I just note at the top of page 6, you have your 4-year graduation rate, which is, you oftentimes overlooked when you talk about measures of affordability. Net tuition people, what people pay on an annual basis is an important characteristic, but if they're not graduating in 4 years, if it takes them an extra semester or two, that in fact it's really a hidden cost of earning the degree. So kudos to you for doing so well. I see Senator Flexer has your hand up. Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Representative Haddad. I just had a quick question. When you were showing that slide just a moment ago, it talked about the number of students living on campus. And I wonder if you could detail the changes in the housing policy in the last couple of years. And I don't really want a full defense of that policy. I don't like the way it's changed, but I would like to know how much of that change is caused by the pressure of less state revenue for the university.
Sure. So you're right. We have changed policies with regard to assurances for students to live on campus multiple years. It's worth noting that at the end of the day, the students who went on our wait list that were upper division students that stuck with us that wanted to live on campus were accommodated. And so what we're seeing at UConn in stores with regard to housing is we've grown enrollment that has increased the demand for beds in our housing program. Students have really enjoyed this experience of living on campus multiple years. At the same time, there's off-campus developments that are opening up. And so our strategic enrollment management plan that we put together recognizes this relationship between our enrollment and the demand for housing, and that the supply of housing is something that happens or is provided between on-campus and off-campus housing. That's always been the case, typically is the case at any university in a college town. Of course, we continue to house a significant percentage of our students on campus, way more than any other public flagship university does. And so, we keep our eye on that. The last aspect of this that we have to keep our eye on is the deferred maintenance and the quality of the program itself. So it's not just the number of beds, but it's looking at ensuring that we have kept pace with the deferred maintenance needs in the program. There's some things that we need to take a look at there.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I just want to make a point that I don't think has a lot of public opportunity to be discussed, that when students are displaced from our state universities, they move into the communities that you and I represent, and it drives up the cost of housing for everyone in that community. And in some of the communities that you and I represent, Representative Haddad, it's getting more and more expensive for anybody to live in those communities. So I think that's another ripple effect impact we need to think about when we're thinking about funding for our state universities in UConn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative, if I may, can I just clarify a point?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I just want to be clear on this chart, this residency for all campuses. If Senator Flexer was looking at that, that's in-state, out-of-state students. It's not the residency for the percent of students who live on campus. I just want to be clear that what that residency chart is showing, that was just our mix of in-state versus out-of-state students. And maybe just to build upon what Nathan had shared, we're now housing over 14,000 students of that 26,000 student undergrads. We're now housing over 14,000 of those students. So we are working hard to increase that number of students who are living on campus.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not blaming the university. I wish that you didn't have to do this. I'm making a case for why we should give you more state resources. Thank you.
And then the only other thing that I'll say, and I'd be doing my constituents a disservice if I didn't mention it, but I know you know this already. I don't have to tell you this again, but you're about to hear it. We hear from undergraduate students who are very happy with many of your new housing opportunities on campus, right? They are fully modern, options for them. Some of the housing opportunities that you provide on campus are the same as were provided to GIs who were returning from World War II. And there we hear multiple complaints just about living conditions. I mean, I lived in a dormitory like that 40 years ago. That those dorms are still there. They were there for 40 years before I got there. They're still there now. We hear stories of public health, potential, public health concerns, cockroach infestations, really challenging sort of technology upgrades that are difficult to sort of retrofit some of those buildings. We're literally talking about brick and mortar buildings that were built in the 1940s and 50s, and they are, I imagine, extremely challenging to maintain. Never mind at a quality level that I think many folks sort of have come to expect. The challenges are great here. We know that there are other campuses that have expressed an interest in having student housing, but when I walk around campus in my community, I see lots of maintenance issues related to housing that you currently provide to students, and wonder what the long-term plan is on that. We'll leave that topic to a discussion for another day, I guess. But I think that all of your on-campus housing is currently occupied, and your growth is coming somewhat with the provision of off-campus alternative housing. And then I'll also just finish by saying that we have a resource limitation in Mansfield. We are a small rural community that hosts a large urban campus. There are sewer capacity issues that, the town of Mansfield always talks about with UConn, since you own the public utility in the greater university area of sewer control. There are water issues, since there's a limited amount of water that's available through well fields in Mansfield and through a diversion permit that comes from the Chenipset Reservoir down into Mansfield. And off-campus housing development is now clear to me that it's being limited by the availability of public utility and water. And so we have to have a broader conversation about how we can reconcile the demands that are being created through increased enrollment on campus and what the community can reasonably provide off campus, right? So there are additional questions here and information around financial aid. Did you want to say anything briefly about your commitment to financial aid and how that's changed over time?
Absolutely. Scroll down there. There we go. So as we talked about that diversification of revenues and certainly landed on the growth of expenses as well, we have increased our expenses for financial aid in order to assist our students' accessibility to UConn. And so you can see there in that chart that the growth in university supported, our institutional supported financial aid, has been significant over the last 5 years, and that's a 52% change in that period of time. We are really doing our best to try to put funds in that bucket as much as possible to be able to assist our students, but that's also what we're asking the state for, some additional funds for in fiscal year 27 to help us further. In addition, I would like to point out that in that chart as well, the state funding, that's primarily the Roberta Willis Scholarship, has benefited significantly as well with the increased amount of funds that have been put into that bucket on a one-time basis in the last few years to help those students as well. So all in all, we've been growing our financial aid over the last several years.
Great. In terms of state-sponsored scholarships, do you know where Connecticut ranks nationally?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I don't know, Nathan, do you have
Yeah,
that?
we're like around the bottom 5 or 6 or something along those lines. So, of the amount of funds per student in the state. So it's low, and to be fair, I think we have some catching up to do.
Thank you for that perspective. There's a question here around various accounts in your budget. I think people wanted just more detail on stuff that's provided here. I'll give you the opportunity to go through it quickly if you'd like, but if you could, as we go through it, if you could flag any other line items that are being subjected to the governor's 20% cut, that would be helpful. I can do the cross-reference myself. I can try to.
Yeah, I think that Pamir was going to talk about the specific
Right.
lines, but it's the Circa and the robotics lines are at the bottom of that table that are going to be subject to that 20% cut.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. Thank you, Rika.
And did anybody have any questions about any of these other accounts? I know there's a follow-up question about one of them next. But
I do.
Senator Austin.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the top ones, the IMRR is not being touched at all. Is that true?
That looks like it's true in OFA's budget sheets.
And so the next one is the Connecticut Vet Medical Diagnostic Lab, which is not vet relative to veterans, it's vet relative to veterinarian. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Yes.
One of the things that you talk about here is a Connecticut wildlife. So one of the things that people are asking for is, and I'm not certain if we would put it in DOAG or here, having a wildlife, a veterinarian for wildlife in DOAG to do some of the work relative to this, or here. So I want to make sure that we have enough resources, because the CVMDL has done a lot of work relative to the situations with avian flu and a number of other areas that without what we didn't have this line item before. Is this enough resources to carry out the mission of the CVMDL?
Thank you, Senator. Noted.
And then EBV, the entrepreneurship boot camp for veterans, is that enough resources for the veterans program, not the veterinarian?
We believe so. We have a very robust entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem. I think this would this would be sufficient to support any of these activities. And
the regional campus health is something fairly new. Have you been able to use these resources in all 4 regional campuses, or is it just in a couple? Until we get the breakdown of what's spent in each of the regional campuses.
yes, Senator, and Nathan first can correct me if I'm wrong here.
No, yeah, we have implemented across all the campuses and are standing up services and space. In fact, we have the space under renovation at the Avery Point campus, I believe, right now. So it's exciting for our students to be able to access those services at the regional campuses.
Okay, and then Circa has done a lot relative to coastal and inland floodplain, and they are being subjected to, so is this giving them 800,000 and they used to get 1 million, or is this going to be cut even more?
That is the case. They would get bit more than that. I think 1 million is the right number, and Rika can correct me if I'm wrong. And they're being asked to do more, actually. So the effect, Senator, of that Circa had in our coastal communities. They're doing amazing work, and we want to see that they're supported. They also are gaining a national recognition for what they're doing.
Correct. And so is this enough dollars for the Circle program, the 800,000?
This is the request. We're trying to do more with less, but yes.
Can you get us the dollars on what is going to happen with this program based on a cut here?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Austin, I just want to clarify your question on the vet diagnostic lab. Are you asking if the 250 is enough to pay for the new wildlife position you were talking about, or just enough to do their current duties?
Enough to do their current duties.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if we need another position. I have to do some more research on that, and I'm not certain if that would be in DOAG or having UConn do more there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. There's a question about, well, does anybody else have any questions about these line items? If not, we'll move on to digital learning. You provided an answer to a question regarding your plans to facilitate digital learning. I presume can you define digital learning for us?
Sure. This is learning through means that are mostly online, really, right? So, and there are different modes of it. There's online instruction. There's flipped classrooms that are part of our digital learning capabilities, and these all fall into what we call digital learning. And as we try to describe in this document is the short-term focus is we'd like to expand what we offer on high-demand classes, really, right? So these are gen ed classes in the initial years, and then develop hybrid courses that will lead to degrees. There's a pedagogical aspect of it. We want to make sure that our learners are getting exactly what they need to get through these experiences. But this will require us investing in classroom technologies, learning management systems, and other tools. Long-term strategy, after we see how this is going to work out, we want to grow fully online degree programs. At the graduate level, we're doing this already, but we want to be able to create stackable certificates leading to potentially master's programs. And these are, we're already doing this, particularly in Masters of Engineering, in finance and other degrees, but we want to expand these and potentially, use adaptive learning platforms. There is work to be done, but I think, we're developing a good plan that we can roll out soon.
Thank you for that explanation. Is there any additional questions about that response? We have 15 minutes more to our allocated time. The next question is on Puerto Rican Studies Initiative. Do you want to tell us briefly about the initiative and in terms of provide a response to the specific question asked?
Right. We tried to provide a fairly detailed answer in the document, but PRSI engages with the Puerto Rican Study Trade Commission. There are several avenues: research and data support, policy collaboration, public engagement, and it is, we greatly appreciate the opportunity to work on this, and I will support the Commission's mission to advance social and economic well-being of the Puerto Rican communities here. And it's a tremendous program that has had a lot of success. And again, this is detailed here. We can provide more information through the folks that are doing this amazing work. If there's interest.
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions to that? Seeing none. The next question, interesting question around metrics that the university uses to measure desired outcomes, right? And so if you want to spend a little bit of time talking about like how you measure the quality and effectiveness of your work, that would be helpful.
Thank you. This is, again, the data is here, but I want to talk, just not about the data alone, but what some of these changes mean for the university as a whole. We're tracking several metrics. One of them is the 4-year graduation rate. The other one is the 6-year graduation rate, retention rates, faculty to student ratio, employment after graduation. And you see a lot of these numbers here. We've maintained where we are. We're in a very, very good state, by the way. If you look at under question 3, our 4-year and 6-year retention rates are phenomenal. That help us with our ranking, that help us with any of the return on investment questions that are coming in front of us. But it's getting really, really difficult to keep it at this level. It requires a lot of our resources, and I try to provide some of these aspects. We have to provide expanded academic capacity. It's additional courses. We need faculty, instructional support, enhanced student support services, increase in number of students by 3,000 plus. Puts a lot of strain on the system, and right now in an environment where we see reduction in state resources, reduction through the federal government, in the next couple of years, we're afraid that we might cut into academic operations. So that's basically where we are. You've seen the state funding picture that Rika walked us through. Similar, cuts exist at the federal level, not just grants and awards coming through federal agencies, but also on the student scholarship opportunities. So keeping it at this level is going to become difficult. Keeping it at this level, if we can't keep it up, it will be reflected in our rankings, in our reputation, and our post-graduation outcomes. So the decisions that we're making right now will have effects 2 years, 4 years, 6 years down the road.
Yeah, I don't want to put too much stock in some of these rankings, these independent rankings. It's an interesting sort of measure, and they're looking at a compilation of a lot of the statistics that you just talked about. But as I understand it, there's lots of methodological questions about how they come up with rankings and that sort of stuff. But I have to say, when I look at this, the U.S. News and World rankings, I don't feel comfortable looking at this chart, and I'm sure you don't either. What in 2018 was a 18th best, public college ranking is now 32. And so I think that, I worry that what we're seeing here is just a leading edge of the impacts of the challenges that you just referred to. Again, I don't put a lot of I don't think this is the goal, is not to have a nationally ranked college and to sort of get, to get that, but rather I think it's really just an assessment of where we are of a number of different sort of qualities of measurement compared to your peer institutions. And it's just something we should keep our eye on as we're keeping an eye on the more important direct metrics related to our students that you referred to on the previous page.
Right. Thank you.
Representative, if I may, I just want to add a little bit to that, because, I think we would all love if we weren't part of this rankings enterprise, right? But the truth of the matter is that the rankings drive the interest of our students to want to come to UConn. and as well as the success of our faculty researchers. And so, for the university, these rankings are, we don't have the control over how they're calculated per se, but these rankings are critical to our success in driving our diversification of our revenue. So if we continue to decline in our rankings, it potentially puts our ability in the future to be able to recruit those students into the institution in jeopardy, or our ability to garner those additional research awards. It really, jeopardizes that level of success of the institution. So, we are very focused on the rankings because it's a cyclical thing, in that if we don't do well in the rankings, we can't get the students. If we can't get the students, we don't do well in the rankings, and so forth. So, it's certainly critical for the success of the university.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we fail to fully reconcile the fact that our public institutions are competing against sometimes, certainly public institutions in other states, against private institutions, in a big marketplace for higher education, post-secondary education opportunities. And it's you operate in that marketplace. We need to be sensitive to that as well. Representative Nuccio.
Thank you. I think this kind of circles back to the conversation I was trying to have earlier too, right? This is where, again, I see part of the problem with the big state institutions, right? The value for what we're getting, what especially the youth are thinking we're getting, right? There's a drop off. Not only is there a drop off of people who are graduating because we're seeing less kids in school, right? We're seeing less kids being born. In the public school system, we've dropped over 10,000 students year over year, right? That means less students even available to go to college. And I think especially Gen Z they don't see the same value that Gen X or even the millennials did in going and getting a college degree. The debt is too much. It costs too much money. And to talk about what it's going to generate over 30 or 40 years, it doesn't equate to the debt that you're going to pay for that 30 or 40 years when you're taking out all the student loans and that. This gets me back to, I think we're at a critical point in higher ed. And how do we bring the cost of getting a degree down? And I don't mean give more money from the state. I mean, how do you restructure? How do you reinvent higher ed to bring down the cost so people start to see the value in it again? Gen Z is overwhelmingly, finally, somebody is pushing people towards the trades in that. I don't see this as something you guys are going to be able to spend your way out of, right? Like I think it's going to get harder as less and less kids are graduating and less kids are thinking about, I need to go to college, knowing that I'm going to come out with tens of thousands of dollars in debt. At some point, the conversation has to be, this stuff matters, right? The rankings, this is the value that people are seeing, right? And I think we're starting to see it change. I think the high days of everybody has to go to college and get a degree are going away. And we need to start thinking about how we reimagine and redo what higher ed is and the value for it. I just think we need to start looking at that rather than always saying, we just have to give more money, or even the tuition has to go up and all of that. What can we do that's different? Because I don't think that the model that we have right now is going to be sustainable for more than, I would say, maybe 7 to 10 years max.
Representative Kennedy? Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you kind of wanted to say anything, but I'll ask.
Nah, I'm good.
Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not even really sure if it's, but when you're talking about the statistics and everything, and just a question really out of curiosity, when you have athletes that have come to the university and, UConn basketball, UConn football, but we know there was a big turnover. Does that impact these figures that you're talking about? Because I know this past year, a lot of student athletes went into the portal and left UConn. And I was just when you were just talking about that, does that impact your numbers and the figures that you're speaking of here?
I'll attempt an answer, and then I'm hoping that Nathan first can supplement this. Total number of our student athletes is, I think, around 600. That's across all sports. So that's a tiny percent of our student population, and most of them are doing fantastically well, actually, these student athletes. But Nathan, if you want to supplement that.
No, that was actually perfect. It's just small on the base.
That is perfect. And I honestly, I always think it's much higher than 600 athletes because when I think of the entire size of the university, but I appreciate that. I was just kind of curious. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr.
Absolutely.
Chairman. Thank you, Mr.
Great.
Chairman.
I saw Senator Fletcher's hand go up briefly and wanted to, don't know if it was a mistake that it came down, but I'll just ask if she.
I don't want to waste everyone's time here and turn this into a debate between myself and our colleagues, but I think this committee needs to be focused on the fact that at the moment when public higher education in particular, but higher education overall was finally almost accessible to almost everybody. Now we're going to go backwards. Now it's not something that's not necessarily for everyone, that everyone doesn't need. I think that should be the opposite of our goals in this committee, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Representative Dathan.
I hate to follow that because that was actually spot on. But I do want to say something else. UConn's been admitting more students every year to help with this sort of revenue challenge. And, we have to think of the implications of that, what it means for our students. They get less classes, longer time to finish a degree, which causes them more debt. People are getting turned away from housing. We talked about that issue. And then there's, the neglect in the dorms. I mean, Rep. Haddad's 80-year-old dorm that's still functioning is living proof of that. And, when I talk to UConn students, this is something that they say to me. And I think, we can, these conversations about the future of higher ed are not just here in Connecticut. That's a nationwide problem. But I think right now we have a flagship university that students want to go to that, is a very challenging place for people to be academically challenged and to grow into the careers they want to. And I think, we need to balance that all. And I think that we are very lucky to have such a good flagship university that our students want to go to, and they just need to figure out how they grow it without losing all of the great things for the students. And I just wanted to share my thoughts on that, but I'm sorry to step on May's toes because I think what she said was actually much better.
Thank you for those comments. We have I think we went over a couple of the next couple of questions in response to previous things, but, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going to ask you to jump to, question 10, which is around lost federal funding. A lot of this is in the area of federal research funding, and it's responsive, I think, to a question that Representative Dathan had asked, or somebody had asked earlier to UConn Health. I think that the lost federal research dollars that are being referred to are across UConn and UConn Health. Is that
correct?
Accurate?
That's correct, sir. Yeah.
Right. And so, I know that this is this is something that's being felt across the country. But can you, and I've got Representative Walker's words are ringing in my ears. Can you give us some examples of what sorts of research are at risk? That I don't know if you have specific examples, either at UConn Health or at UConn, and what the impact is of just not being curious about those issues.
We do. So, there are two parts of this that the loss of federal funding. The first one is straight up cuts from the federal government saying that this is what we committed to funding, but we're no longer interested in funding. And that bucket is around $40 million or so. That's for the last fiscal year. So these are grant cancellations. And then there is there are dollars that we usually get in a typical year. So the year before, our total new awards were around $370 million in new awards. Before the administration changed in Washington, D.C., we were tracking around $400 million for this year. We ended up with $314 million. That includes the cancellations. So, and I think this committee knows this well. Research and development is something that we subsidize. So losing money on things that we're subsidizing, which is also one of the reasons that there is a budget shortfall. And there are tables here that describe the effect of what that is. And the areas of funding that are affected are, as you can imagine, energy. The entire energy policy of the federal government has changed. You've seen it with offshore wind, where we're strong on other renewables, which were strong. The federal government now wants to invest in nuclear energy. You've seen it with research and development awards that are related to how we interact with our communities, right? So these are, for example, environmental justice program that was canceled. There are programs that are associated with serving underrepresented communities that were canceled. Specific training programs for underrepresented groups, anything that was related to our minority serving institutions, like our Waterbury campus, like our Hartford campus, Hispanic serving institutions. Department of Education funds were cut. They're doing relatively well with NIH grants coming to UConn Health and UConn. We're not doing that well with NSF, which is actually slow playing the rollout of the awards. So that's where we are in terms of the research funding. There are several examples we can provide what's been canceled and how this affects us, but it's been a tough year. It's been a tough year when it's a tough year when both the federal government is cutting funding and the state is reducing its funding. It makes things incredibly difficult for the university.
Thank you. I regret that we don't have a little bit more time to talk about it, but we're 5 minutes over, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to just. I don't think we have to go over it, but I had asked a question about statutory tuition waivers. These are state mandated waivers, so that when students apply and are accepted to your institution, if they qualify for one of these waivers, you are essentially prohibited from collecting tuition from them, and it represents lost revenue to the university. And I guess I read that from this that the total value of those statutory waivers totals about $9.4 million in fiscal year 25, and it says fall of 2025 was about 5 million for the first semester. And I guess you don't have numbers for this semester, but it represents about a $10 million loss in revenue.
That's correct. Yes,
Right.
that's correct.
And again, I want to be clear. I don't have a complaint about providing an opportunity for these well-deserving people to get an education through our public institutions, but know that since we don't factor these into the way we calculate our Black grant. I suspect that the difference is made up by lost financial aid or higher tuition rates afforded to other students. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it's those other revenues that we're generating that have to go to cover these costs.
Yeah, thank you. The last question is about an MOU between Avery Point and the Native American tribes. The explanation is here. But I consider myself, to be knowledgeable about these things, but I didn't know we had an MOU. So why don't you tell me, why do we have an MOU? What's the history of that, and what's the current status that's being asked about in this question?
Pamir, did you want to take that?
Pamir, yeah.
It's a bit of a challenging situation. We signed an MOU, memorandum of agreement, memorandum of understanding between every point and the Native American tribes. There were some objections by the Attorney General's office, and I would very much prefer that that this committee would talk with the Attorney General's office about getting some of the details. There were some disagreements in terms of the verbiage that was used in that. Still talking with them. We're still talking with our tribes as well, but there were challenges with some of the language there.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'll let you to go first, and then Senator Summers has her hand up. But go ahead, Senator Austin.
So this was a big deal because this is a land grant university that, if you go back to the Mitchell, I think it's the Mitchell document, would that be true? So if you go back to that federal document, when land grant universities were first put up, the lands were taken from the Native Americans. And so across the country, this has been being moved on. Connecticut was actually one of the last places to actually do this. One of the last places, even though it was the first to get a land grant. Now, it was going to Yale, and it switched over to UConn at some point because Yale was not operating in what was determined to be good faith back 100 and some years ago, not today. This was done, and all 5 state recognized tribes, which includes 2 federally recognized tribes, were brought in and said, this is really wonderful. This is what we want to do. It's about time we took care of this issue. And the agreement was in the local newspapers. It was all over the place that this was, UConn used it as a marketing tool to say that this was a wonderful thing that they were doing, that they were finally addressing this long-term problem or long-term action that happened. And all of the tribal nations are asking, why are we not hearing anything about this anymore? And I've asked the Attorney General's office where this is, and they say the problem is more with UConn than with them. And I don't believe that. I believe the problem is more with them, but we have to continue to ask the question because the agreement has been signed by all the tribal nations. And it seems to me it's a clear sign of disrespect that, and they're not asking them to do, to revert to the land to the Native Americans. They're not asking for that. That's not in the agreement. There's no reparations relative to that. But this was a sign of respect that brought in a group that has not been respected and who are now feeling that they're not going to get any respect relative to this issue. And is it the Mitchell document? I believe it's the Mitchell document going back.
It's the Morrell Act.
Thank you. Thank you.
Act, okay.
So, Senator, if I may, if I may chime in here, we don't see this as a branding effort. We're genuinely working with our Native American tribes. The work is continuing, whether there is an objection from the Attorney General's office or not. Our teams have been meeting on a weekly basis. There was one meeting this morning at 8 o'clock. This is an ongoing conversation, but it does not, whether there's a formal MOU, whether the Attorney General's office agrees or not. We're working hand in glove with our Native American tribes.
Because I just heard a couple weeks ago from a couple of the state recognized tribes that said, where are we? How come this can't be resolved? What is going on? And it is directly reflective of UConn being a land grant university. And this is a form of us finally dealing with this problem that dates back 120 years. And I'll pull up the Morrell Act and send it to the administrator so that people can read it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Please
I'm gonna,
note that it's not with us, Senator.
Thank you.
I will call on Senator Summers, but it may be someone can let me know. Is there a fiscal impact to this question? We're the Appropriations Committee, and I'm looking at the budget. It's just this is of interest to people on the Appropriations Committee, but it's not an Appropriations Committee issue. Is that
Correct?
okay? Thank you, Senator Summers.
Yes, and I may have missed it, but I was wondering why we have the university here. First of all, I wanted to align my comments along with Representative Datham that I think we need to make sure that our flagship university remains in as high standing and as it has been, and make sure that it is funded appropriately for our future generations. I did want to ask, on the record, there's been a lot of information about the future of Avery Point, and I was wondering if you could speak to that from the university standpoint. You know, when I have met with you, you have indicated that there was no plans on actually closing Avery Point. Could you speak to that on the record for the Appropriations Committee? I think that's important because people have heard different things, and I would appreciate a response. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let me say this very, very clearly. The university is not planning to close the Avery Point campus. We stand behind that campus because it does amazing work, not just for the university, but for the state. These are related to some of the activities that we do in oceanography, marine sciences, coastal resilience, our sea grant activities, our work through the extension with our fisheries and oyster producers. Avery Point is a center of excellence through which we engage the federal government and the communities around us. There are no such plans, and I think that's as openly as I can say that. Yeah.
Appreciate that response. There's conflicting information on that, and I understand, there's a desire to bring dorms to that facility, which I think would be great too. But it appears that it's going to be much more costly than what has been anticipated. And I just wanted to make sure that it was on the record that, if there is not dorms on that campus, that doesn't mean that you have any intention of closing that campus. And I want to thank you for your work. And those are all my questions for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Summers. Representative Gasky.
Yeah, real quick, because I know we're over. In our first work session that we had, I remember this discussion was brought up about Avery Point, and I know the chair had requested a follow-up meeting. I was wondering if on specifically Avery Point, I was wondering if we are going to be continuing doing that or not. Thank you.
Can you please clarify that question?
It's not really a question for UConn per se. It's a question probably for, I don't see Chair Walker. Oh, Chair Walker's here, but she's on. I remember we were discussing of having a potential follow-up meeting on Avery Point when the president came to the Appropriations Committee for the first budget presentation. I was wondering if we were going to have a follow-up meeting on that because it was mentioned that we would potentially be doing that.
Yeah. The UConn team is available anytime.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for UConn? We're 17 minutes over. It's a good thing we started 15 minutes early, 10 minutes early, I guess. Thank you very much for answering our questions, for providing the follow-up information that you've pledged to provide, and for committee members for asking thoughtful questions.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much.
everybody.